y'all to Robyn on the Farm. Today I'm sharing with you a really easy sourdough recipe. This is sourdough English muffin bread, and it's actually a sourdough discard bread. So it's super fast, super easy. You can have this done from start to finish in about an hour and a half. So I love quick sourdough discard recipes, and this is a great one that you have to try. This bread has kind of a coarse texture, and you get those nooks and crannies, those crevices that are just like English muffins. Perfect for toasting and then slathering with some butter and some jam. So good. So let's just get started on the recipe. To get started on our sourdough English muffin bread, I'm going to start with 3/4 cup of warm milk. Now, down in the description, I'm going to leave the printable recipe, and it'll be in grams and in cups and spoons, so you can make it either way you want. So this is 3/4 cup of warm milk. You want this to be about 100 degrees, 100 to 110 degrees. I just popped it in the microwave for about 45 seconds just to take that chill off. That'll help our yeast. So just put that right on into your mixing bowl. Now I'm using my KitchenAid mixer today. This is only going to mix up for a minute or two. So this one's really easy. If you don't have a mixer, then you can just whip this up by hand, beat it by hand just for a couple minutes, and it'll be good to go. So you don't have to have a stand mixer. You can also use hand beaters if you want. Now this is whole milk. You can also use a lower fat milk, and you can use milk alternatives. Any of those will work just fine for this recipe. Next, we want 1 tablespoon of sugar. So 1 tablespoon of sugar just right on in there on top of your milk. You can also use honey if you want, but I'm using 1 tablespoon of sugar. Next, we want some yeast. Now, I always use instant yeast in this recipe, so that's what I recommend, but you want 2 1/4 teaspoons of this instant yeast. Now, if you use those little packets of yeast, then you'll want 1 packet. But I definitely recommend buying your yeast in bulk like this. This is way cheaper. Those little packets and those little jars are expensive. So you want 2 1/4 teaspoon right in there on top of your milk and your sugar. And next we want some butter. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of melted butter. This is a really awesome little Lodge cast iron melting pot. I love this melting pot. I got it for Christmas and I have used it practically every day since then. This is so handy. So you want 2 tablespoons melted butter, or you can use oil if you'd rather use 2 tablespoons of oil, but I think that the butter gives this a better flavor. So I recommend the butter. Next we want some sourdough starter. This is some sourdough discard that I've been collecting over the last couple days as I've fed and maintained my sourdough starter. Now for this recipe, you can use active, ripe, bubbly sourdough starter, or you can use unfed, hungry sourdough discard. That's what I'm doing today, but either one will work just fine. For this recipe, you want 3/4 cup of your sourdough starter or discard, whatever you want to use, but it's also 180 grams if you like to weigh your discard. So this is my sourdough starter Hester. This is a fantastic, strong starter. I make lots of sourdough bread with Hester. And if you are struggling with your sourdough starter or you just want to try mine, I have Hester freeze-dried on my website, robynonthefarm.com. So I'll put a link if you want some of my sourdough starter. You can just reconstitute this, feed it, maintain it, keep it going for the rest of your life. This stuff is amazing. Now that our sourdough starter or sourdough discard is in there, we want some flour. I'm going to use 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour. Just going to put that right on in there, 2 1/4 cups. Now you can also use bread flour if you'd rather do that, but this all-purpose flour works just fine for this recipe. And it's a little bit cheaper these days, so that's what I suggest using. So 2 1/4 cups right on in there. And after our flour, now we want to add our salt. This is my Redmond's real salt. Love this salt. This is really great stuff. You want 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Now, if you don't have any of this kind, you can use white table salt. You can use the Himalayan pink salt, whatever you want to use. But definitely pour it not over your bowl with everything else in it, or you might overpour and ruin this whole thing. So you want 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. Just put it right on in there with everything else. Next, you want some baking powder, not baking soda. Baking soda can actually react with your sourdough starter, and it's not good. So definitely use baking powder. Don't get confused between the two. So you want 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and this will help your bread to rise really quickly. This is kind of a cross between a quick bread and a batter bread. You'll see when we get there. And those are all of the ingredients that go into our sourdough English muffin bread. Now I'm just gonna throw this into my mixer, and I'm just gonna let this run on speed 2 for about 1 to 2 minutes, and that's all it's gonna take. I started on speed 1 just to get all that flour incorporated so it doesn't explode out of my bowl. Now I'm gonna turn it on to speed 2 and let this knead just for about 2 minutes. I wanted to be sure that you could see the consistency of this batter. It's more like a batter instead of a dough. It's very, very loose, sticky, and this is exactly what you want it to look like. Now, your sourdough starter consistency will really make a difference here. If yours is very, very thick, then I'd add about 2 cups of flour instead of 2 1/4. And if yours is runny, then about 2 1/4. But this is what you want your dough to look like. Now it's time to turn it off. It's been going for about a minute. It's time to turn this off and go ahead and put it right into the bread loaf pan. Notice that I use my flat paddle attachment instead of my dough hook for this recipe. Normally when I'm making bread, I'll use my dough hook, and that's just because it's great for kneading. But for this recipe, we really just mixed up the dough for about 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes. So for this one, you can use either your dough hook or your flat paddle attachment. Either one you want to use will work just fine. Now it's already time to put our dough into the loaf pan. I love this recipe. It's so fast, so easy. Now, I love my cast iron loaf pans. These are what I recommend. There's none of those chemicals or coatings or anything like that to get into our breads. I poured about 1 tablespoon of olive oil into my cast iron loaf pan, just rubbed it all around, and it is ready to put this dough in. Now, this is an English muffin bread, and so to me, English muffins need some cornmeal. That just makes them more like an English muffin. So I got out my Nutri-Mill wheat grinder back there, and I ground up some corn. So this is fresh ground cornmeal, and I'm just gonna put a little bit of this in the bottom of my loaf pan. You can get it on the sides, whatever you want. This is totally optional though. You do not have to use cornmeal at all if you don't have any. And you definitely don't have to use fresh ground. You can use some out of a package from the grocery store just fine. But I just think this makes it a little bit more like an English muffin. And that's what we're making, English muffin toasting bread. It's time to put our dough in the loaf pan. I added a little bit more cornmeal all around the edges because I just like it like that. It makes it seem more like an English muffin. Now I wanted you to look really closely at this batter. Look how stretchy it is. It's definitely wet, sticky, and this is exactly what you want it to look like. Now sometimes mine ends up a little bit more like a ball of dough that you can actually shape into a loaf, and that works okay too. But this is ideal. This is what you really want to go for. So I am gonna go ahead and put this in the loaf pan. And you just kind of want to scoop it in there and then smooth it out. Now, if yours is a little bit more wet than this, then that is fine too. That will work great too. Now I'm just gonna smooth it into this pan. Just gonna use my hands. I'm gonna kind of just try to spread it out so it fills up the entire loaf pan. Now, like I said before, if yours is more like a loaf going into this pan, that'll work fine. More like a bread dough, like a traditional looking bread dough, that works too. I have made it like that. I'll show you how that turns out too. If it's more wet than this, then that's great too. Really doesn't matter for this loaf. It is gonna work just fine. So here's mine. I'm gonna add a little bit more cornmeal to the top, just for fun. I like that crunch it gives it, and it's just more like an English muffin. So add maybe 2 tablespoons on top. And here's mine. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let this rise on the countertop for about 45 minutes. I just want it to kind of peak above the edge of this loaf pan. So I'll show it to you when it's ready to go into the oven. As it's rising, I'm gonna go ahead and get my oven preheated to 400 degrees. The dough or the batter to our sourdough English muffin toasting bread has been rising for 45 minutes. This looks exactly right. See how it's peeking up over the edge of the bread loaf pan? Now I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven at 400 degrees for 22 to 25 minutes. I usually leave mine in for about 25 minutes, and I'll show it to you when it's all done. Look at this gorgeous loaf of bread. I just got it out of the oven. I'm gonna go ahead and turn it out of the loaf pan. I like getting my bread out of the loaf pan immediately. Came out nicely. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put it on this wire rack to cool. Oh, this is such a nice loaf of bread. It's crunchy on the outside, but I can tell it's really soft on the inside. So I'm gonna let this cool just for a little bit and then we'll cut into it and check out the inside. All right, our sourdough English muffin toasting bread has been cooling and I am ready to cut into this. Let's check out the inside. Now with English muffins, usually you open them with a fork and you get to see all those little nooks and crannies better, but I have to cut this bread with a bread knife, so that's a little boring, but look at this. This is awesome bread. And I wish that you could feel the texture. It's so different than normal bread. It definitely feels like a little English muffin. Cut some more. Now this is meant to be toasted and then slathered with butter and jam. Oh, that is how it is absolutely the best. But look at the texture of this bread. It has little nooks and crannies and it is fantastic for toasting. It's really good eating just like this too. It has a really unique flavor, but it's definitely meant to be toasted. I love the cornmeal on it. I think it just really adds to it. I don't think it's as good without the cornmeal, so I definitely recommend adding the cornmeal. So I'm gonna take a little bite of this and just try it out. It's like an English muffin. I'm gonna go ahead and toast this slice and try it out that way. I recommend this one, y'all. Make this recipe. This one is yummy. I wanted to show you this other loaf that I made a few days ago of this sourdough English muffin bread. If you look at this one on the left, this one was made with a little bit thicker sourdough discard. It had been sitting in the fridge for a few days, and so it was really thick. It wasn't quite as runny as today's batch. And so this one, when I mixed up the dough, it actually turned into a ball of dough. And instead of just kind of putting it into the loaf pan like I did this one and pressing it out, this one I actually rolled up and put it into the loaf pan, more like a traditional ball of dough, more like a traditional bread dough. So this one was a little bit more like a batter, this one was more like a regular dough. But look how similarly they turned out, and they really turned out about the same. So if yours is totally different than mine when you put it in the pan, that's okay, it's still gonna turn out great. So this one's made with a little bit thicker sourdough discard, this one was a little bit runnier, and that was the main difference. So just wanted to show that to you in case you had any questions about that. I'll leave the printable recipe down in the description for the sourdough discard English muffin toasting bread. I'll also leave a link to our cute handmade beeswax bread bags if you're looking for a better way to store your bread. Thanks so much for being here with me on Robyn on the Farm. I'll see you next time.
Robyn's in the kitchen, dough beneath her hands, wheat from the fields and eggs from her land. Sunlight through the window, a warm golden glow. She's working hard to make that dough.